All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'm happy to introduce game designer and producer David Mullich. He's a trailblazer in the field with years of experience in the industry and a number of great titles under his belt.
Hey everyone, nice to be here. Looking forward to your questions, and hope I have some stories to tell.
All right. I'm going to kick it off with my own question. So you've been in the business for a while, and
Long while, 40 years, no, 41 years now.
41 years. It's longer than I've been alive.
Yeah, I
Um,
first started programming games on an abacus.
so you've worked on The Prisoner, it was a text-based game, and Heroes of Might and Magic and Vampires: The Masquerade Bloodlines, um,
Among
what,
others.
among others. Yeah, yeah. But The Prisoner, especially since it's text-based and it came out a while ago, they really don't make them like
1979.
that anymore. They really don't make them
No,
like
they don't. They don't. In fact,
what?
no. Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, what were you saying?
In fact, when I created it, it was totally unlike any other game that had ever been made. In fact,
Mhm.
it was I was very much inspired by the television show starring Patrick McGowan, The Prisoner, because it was rerun on our local PBS station when I was in college, and I was really attracted to its themes of resisting authority and not doing what they tell you to do, not following the rules, all while they're playing mind games on you to try to get you to reveal information. So I wanted to make a game in the same vein, and I waited for a couple of years until I was hired by a game studio. Well, actually, educational software company called Edgeware Services that did some that also produced some games, and I pleaded with the owner to let me make this game based upon The Prisoner, and it was it was text based, although we call it text graphics.
Mhm.
We use the all the special characters on the keyboard to create pictures on the screen. But yeah, it was I created a game that just really broke all the rules behind it. It was just a total mind games on the player, uh, and I don't think there's anything ever been like it before or since. And in fact, what it was probably best known for was you were given. I was trying to in the TV series the people that captured the prisoner number 6, he was called in the show, was trying to find out his reason for resigning,
Mhm.
presumably from a spy agency. And so I had to represent that somehow. So what I did was I give the randomly generated a 3-digit number uh, that represented the player's reasons for resigning. And the
Uh,
basic rule of the game was, under no circumstances do you ever reveal that number. You ever type it in, never select anything with that number in it. Just totally disassociate yourself from that number. Well, at some point in the game, you're playing it, and suddenly the game crashes. And it says,
mhm.
error at line number. The number happened to be your resignation number. And this was on the Apple II. And the
Mhm.
immediate reaction was, for anyone who's familiar with the Apple II, would be type in list line number, then type in that line number. Well, if you typed in list line number and type in your resignation number, you would lose the game. So
Ooh.
it was total. It tricked a lot of people, and the game became especially known for that sort of meta experience in it.
Yeah, I watched a playthrough of parts of it, and I saw the part where it gives you the number in the beginning, and it was
Yeah,
cool to see the emotion and like the setting the story portrayed in that medium. It was really interesting to see.
yeah. Well,
And
my always when I design games, I try to figure out what experience they want the player to have. And in emulating the TV show, I wanted to create the experience of feeling frustrated and that there was no hope for you. yet you were still engaged enough to keep trying.
Mhm.
So that's what I tried to recreate, just that total frustration, losing, always getting sent back to square one again and again and again, and trying to solve that problem of how do you keep have the player always lose, but still keep going on and on and on. And I don't know, based upon the reviews and based upon a lot of people who still remember the game, I think I cracked that nut. I haven't cracked it since, but in that particular game, I did.
So that kind of brings me to my next question. Um, since that game to now, what has changed in the industry? Like, what are the biggest changes when you develop a game, when you produce a game?
Well, the biggest change, uh, it actually kind of came full circle back then, because there weren't any big publishers.
Mhm.
Uh, games they weren't self-published, but there were a lot of small developers and small publishers, and as a result, you could really try anything you wanted to. I thought there was a lot of creativity and ingenuity in trying different things
Oh,
in
absolutely.
the late '70s and early '80s, until the big publishers started springing up, like Activision and Electronic Arts and so on, and they became the gatekeepers of what could eventually be published. More and more, the mom and pop. This was before there was a GameStop or anything like that. Really, the country was filled up mom and pop uh, 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 game stores or computer stores that you would
Mhm.
sell your games into, and the early publishers, like Edgeware, the company I was at, we'd have our own sales force, and we call up each of those stores and sell into them. Eventually, Electronic Arts and others formed distribution channels, and they became big distributors. And so, therefore, if you wanted to get your game into those stores, you had to go through them, and they became the gatekeepers of what kind of games actually got released. And over time, especially as the budgets for games got bigger and bigger and bigger,
Huge, yeah.
companies got more and more risk averse.
Mhm.
And so they felt comfortable only in releasing games that get into well-established patterns, that the standard genres, standard game mechanics, familiar stories, the same way the industry is today.
Yeah.
It's
You
why we
definitely
get
see
so
that.
much. Yeah, reason why we get so much of the same stuff over and over and over, because they just want to sell what they know will sell, and it's tough to
Mhm.
take a risk on it. Valve fixed that problem when they came out with Steam, that finally allowed the smaller developers
The
trying
indie
new stuff to find an audience. And it didn't have to be a large audience. They could find that niche audience
devs.
who liked the unusual stuff.
Mhm.
And so, and now there are a lot of other outlets for indie developers, and in fact, different ways of financing, like through Kickstarter and other crowdsourcing methods. So, in one sense, we come full circle in
Yeah.
that we're back to more ingenuity and more creative chances, creative risks being taken, but on the indie side. In fact, when I go to E3 and I walk through all the booths, the Nintendo booth and the and the Sony booth and all that, I get bored very quickly, because it's like I see the same games I see every single year.
Mhm.
I go to the IndieCade booth though, and I see all the indie developer games, and that's where I find all the really cool stuff to play. So
The indie
that's
gems,
what I
yeah.
enjoy, indie stuff. But yeah, that in a way we come full circle. But yeah, another big change, of course, is the fact that because uh, computers have got more powerful, can do better graphics, better audio, what's required to produce high quality content requires usually more and more people in it.
Mhm.
It's AAA games where you have dozens or hundreds, or even in some cases over 1,000 people working on a game. Uh,
Jeez.
Very different. Back in the old days, I did the programming, the design, and what we called art back then, all by myself.
Mhm.
And And that was normal. That was a AAA game. And nowadays, yeah, you have indie developers who are jacks of all trades and can do it all, but
Mhm.
they're not AAA games. So it's really tough to these days. What's big? You can make a big splash with being just one person with an idea.
Mhm.
Back in the old days, nowadays it's really tough.
It
A lot
is,
harder.
yeah. There's always like one or two, really good indie gems that, break through the mainstream and that everybody gets into.
Yeah, there
And
are.
those are always like my favorite games.
Yeah,
So I
but there's
definitely get what you're
also
saying.
a lot of good games being made out there because there's so many people making indie games now because it's
Exactly.
so easy to make games. I mean, download a free engine, a lot of tutorials out there. You get a lot of assets you can get, a lot of SDKs, a lot of people you can talk to for advice, and getting distributed is that much easier. But getting attention is harder because you got to go through all that noise. It's so many people are making games. That makes it really tough. Really, so you can come out with a great game, but still not get the notice.
Mhm. So we have a question uh, from Ben. He wants to know um, what project that you've worked on has had the most impact on you, and what is your favorite project that you've worked on and why?
Boy, the one that's had the most impact. And I've never been asked that question before. I've been asked what's my favorite project, but
Hmm.
not one that has the most impact. And when I think about it, same answer for both. Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And I'll tell you first why it's my favorite project. My favorite project because of the people involved.
Hmm.
It was a great development team. We all got along together. Everyone was talented, and the project was just a joy to work on from beginning to end. And I think that showed in the final product. So that was my favorite. It's also the only game I've ever made that I enjoyed playing after it was released. Almost
Really?
every game, by the time it's released, I'm sick of it because I've played it over and over again. Usually when it was in a state where it wasn't fun to play.
Uh,
And so, especially you're working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, and you just want to get the thing done and out, and everyone's tired and irritable, and you never get all the bugs fixed, you never get everything polished you want to get polished, and but eventually you got to ship, so eventually you have to put out that game, and so it it's such a sour experience at the end. It very rarely is it a period of excitement. Uh,
mhm.
that I don't want to touch anywhere. But Heroes of Might Magic, that was different. That game, I don't know what it was. It was just lightning in a bottle. It's so addictive, and it was something very fun and cheerful about it. It was uplifting to play. That I enjoyed playing it afterwards. Reason why it is my most the game that influenced me most is that even though I made it 20 years ago, it's still fondly remembered, especially in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe. And I'm just amazed by how many people are still playing it
Oh
in
yeah.
that part of the world. And I mean, they're more than playing it; they're like addicted to it. They're cosplay
There's a
players.
pro scene, yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, uh, last year, uh, my former boss from Activision, Thane Lyman, uh, who's now heading up Wargaming.net's Minsk office.
Hmm.
He invited me over for a week, give a talk on the making of the game, and also to run a 3-day game design workshop for his team. And so while I was there, it's like I would constantly get stopped by people to pose for pictures and sign autographs, and it's just amazing to me because here in the United States, no one pays any attention to me, but there, it's like I was a rock star. And even on the last day of my stay there, they arranged a city tour,
Mhm.
and I got a tour of their war museum, which is the most prestigious museum in the country, celebrating their resistance in World War II.
Mhm.
And so got a tour, and the tour guide took me around. And finally, at the end of this tour, the tour guide turns to me and says, "My husband is a big Heroes of Might and Magic fan. Will you take a picture with me?" And that blew me away. It wasn't just someone out in the game industry; it was just some average person in Belarus. As well as getting attended a meeting of Belarus game developers, and I got interviewed by Minsk TV. So for that, so I mean, it's just the amount of love and admiration for that game that is still going on. Uh, not just due to my efforts, but to my entire team's efforts. They did such a good job on it. Just I'm continuously getting impressed by, uh, by all the fandom behind that game. It's what influenced me most, just because all the goodwill for it.
Yeah, I watched a playthrough earlier today, and the way the guy was talking, he was talking about like the meta and like the pro scene and like what works where, and it seems so complicated yet so like it works so well. And again, they don't. I feel like they don't make RPGs like that anymore.
Well, yeah, it was it's very much an elegant game, and elegant games are ones in which the design is simple, but your choices are deep. You have a lot of different choices.
Mhm.
So it really does that good balancing of simplicity versus depth. Uh, and that's one reason why I think it's endured for so long.
So we have another question from Ben. No one in my studio seems to want to take up the role of producer slash director, but with the pace of our project, is progressing, we badly need one. Do you have any advice on how we can take up that leadership role to drive their team to finish a project within a reasonable amount of time?
Producer is a really a thankless role, and the reason why, it's like if the game does well, it's all due to the team, rightly so.
Mhm.
And if the game does badly, it's the producer's fault
Mhm.
for not getting the team to work together. So that's I mean, you have to have so many roles. You're a plate spinner because you got to make sure all the tasks are happening and nothing gets forgotten and falls behind. You got to be like the navigator that looks ahead while everyone else is focusing on their current tasks. You got to be looking a week, a month
Mhm.
or so ahead, avoiding any obstacles that are heading up. You're a cat herder because you got all these different people working on the project, a lot of whom have different responsibilities and different concerns. So they're all doing their own thing, but you got to make sure that they're all doing their own thing, but kind of in the right direction. And you're the person who really has to walk through fire because whenever the inevitable catastrophe happen and tempers flare
Mhm.
and the finger of blame gets pointed at you, you just gotta
Just gotta
ignore all
roll.
that, just keep moving forward and finding the solution. So it's a tough role to fill.
Mhm.
And the way I became a producer, I started off as a game designer and programmer right out of college, and I was originally essentially a independent game developer that
Mhm.
published through Edgeware Services. And then when I graduated, they hired me full time to be a game designer producer. So after a short while, my boss came up with the idea. He said, instead of you designing and programming games yourself, be a lot more effective if we hired a number of different programmers and you came up with the designs
Mhm.
and managed the project. And I didn't like that idea at all because I was an introvert, extremely shy. And the idea of telling other people what to non-confrontational, and the idea of telling other people what to do was
Mhm.
just completely opposite to my personality. But my boss forced me into that position, well, pressured me into it. And it was partly not in a mean way, but it was something we needed. And when I started actually doing it, I found out I enjoyed it. I liked being the keeper of the vision, and I liked motivating people.
Mhm.
And especially when I saw the position not being a boss, but more as a mentor and a
Mhm.
support person and a leader. And when I saw in those that more positive light, I really grew into it, and that's what I've been doing uh, ever since. So to Ben, I would say find someone, whoever on your team is really good at conceptualizing the entire project and understands all the details and is capable of looking ahead a little bit and understands how to talk to the different team members. Uh, you don't have to be expert in all the fields. In fact, you don't have to be an expert in any of them, but you have to at least understand each of the different disciplines, art and sound and programming and design, enough they can speak the same language and understand their problems and understand what they need. Whoever is best on that on the team. And nobody's going to be perfect, but whoever's best at that, just say, do it. Even if they don't want to do it, do it. You know,
They say
and just
they say the best leaders are the ones who don't seek to lead, but are, thrust into it.
yeah. I mean, it's the way I learned to swim is that I was in second grade and at a second grade birthday party, and the girl at the party, Rhonda, she went and she pushed me into the pool, into the deep end. And I went down to the bottom. And I thought for sure I was going to drown, but then I slowly came up and I started swimming. That's how I learned to swim. You gotta. I don't recommend pushing kids into a pool, but metaphorically,
Metaphorically.
yeah, sometimes you just got to push people in the deep end
I think that's
and
how I
let them
learned to
figure it out.
swim. Thank you for that metaphor.
Sure.
So we have another question from Ben. I recently took up the IGDA student SIG vice chair role.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
mhm. When it was offered to me, and I see that you're the co-creator of for IGDA as a board member. What are some great ways to engage a community of devs? As I feel like we can do networking nights, but I struggle to see how we can foster community after the chapter lacked leadership for 2 years.
All right. Well, first of all, a bit of clarification. I did not create the chapter. The chapter long preceded me. I'm one of 7 board members on the chapter and just completing my 4-year membership. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue next year. I run for the office again. But my experience with the IGDA has been great. Couple ways to engage people. Well, first of all, what I would do is probe your membership, survey your membership, and find out what they need, what they want. To do a little bit of data collection first and figure out what you need to satisfy that need.
Mhm.
And we found that a lot of what our membership they do like, well, before the COVID-19 thing, do like getting together for meetups. So we'd have monthly meetups
Mhm.
at various establishments. You know, sometimes it's a bar, sometimes it was a restaurant, sometimes some other location. You know, after work, usually on a weeknight, because although we did have some coffee meetups on Saturdays and such. So we tried to mix up the location a little bit
Yeah.
and get people you know, the opportunity to get together and talk. We would find that usually it was the same core group of people. So it did take some effort to try to get a broader range of people coming. And that usually involved a little bit of evangelizing and a meeting usually there are other groups like for us it was Women in Gaming International and a few other groups game development type meetup groups where we kind of convince them, well, come visit our group sometimes, and we'll come to yours and do a little cross pollination kind of thing. So we've worked to bring in some more blood, so it wasn't always the same people. And we'd have game nights. We would make some of the events, show off your prototype, show off the indie game you're working on, and we post images and other thing and announcements about it on our own social media. So it was a way to get indies to promote their games. And then we'd have just game playing nights, playing card games or tabletop games, just as a more of a social event. But we've even had people bring in the games that they were making themselves, analog games that they're making themselves. So meetups are a good experience. We put together panels of speakers about various topics, anything from game writing to starting up your own studio. We recently had a collection of lawyers who work in the game industry, and we put together a job fair last year that was very successful. So there are a lot of different things, a lot of different types of events you can put together, people want to meet each other. They want to learn new things, and they want to be able to show off stuff they're working on. So those are probably 3 pillars for events that you might want to think about doing. It's tough, of course, right now during COVID to do it, but fortunately, one of our group members has their own Zoom account, so we've been doing online stuff. We online panels and online meetups and all that, and it's been successful for us because people still need to reach out to other people, even if they have to stay home while doing it.
Okay, so this is from Jack. He couldn't be here today, but Ben is asking this question on his behalf. What is your favorite aspect of Heroes of Might and Magic development? And it's his personal 3 is his personal favorite. But if there was a different game in the franchise, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Oh, geez. My favorite aspect of it? I am. Boy, that's tough. Heroes of Might and Magic is interesting because it's part storytelling and part strategy. And I really like the balance between the two. Probably, although my favorite part of it, I think, is laying siege to castles. And I like using the different siege weapons we had in the game. So that made it very cool. I guess other than Heroes of Might and Magic 3, take a look at Heroes of Might and Magic 2. When I was offered the position to go on to Heroes of Might and Magic 3 to be the producer of it, they gave me Heroes of Might and Magic 2 to look at, and I took it home and I played it, and it had won all these awards, and I thought, as a player, I said, this is a really, really good game. And I felt my reluctancy about taking on the task of doing a sequel to it was I was worried there was no place to go but down, because this game was just so good. But as I was playing, I thought, well, the artwork on it, I thought the artwork is about 5 years behind the times. So that's one thing I could do is upgrade the artwork at least. And so I mentioned that when I went back to interview again with John Van Caneghem, who's the founder of New World Computing, and Mark Caldwell, who's the general manager. I said, I really want to emphasize the artwork. And they said that was good because they were unhappy with the current state of their artwork, and invited me to go and choose my own art director for it. And so I went and on my first day on the job, I went through the art department and had sit downs with each of the artists. Just what I said was just a way to introduce myself, but really I was looking for a new art director. And everybody on the team would say, "Oh, everything here is perfect. It's great. It's a real easy gig. I mean, you get sit there and do nothing for most of the project, and then do all your work in the final 2 weeks."
Mhm.
And I couldn't believe that when I heard that, but a couple of people said that. And finally, I got to one artist who said, "This place sucks. Everyone here is lazy. They don't work hard enough. We could be doing so much better. The quality could be so much better." And she's
Yeah,
telling me all
absolutely.
this. I think I found my art director. As it turned out, she was also the uh, the best artist in the company. I didn't even realize that while talking to her about it, but afterwards I did. And so her name's Phelan Sykes, and I made her my art director, and we took along with Greg Fulton, the designer, we decided to take a much more uh, uh, a much more extreme view of the artwork, the grittier approach to the artwork.
Mhm.
Uh, and that part made its game successful. That was part of what made the game so successful. But going back to Heroes of Might and Magic 2, there is a more of a whimsical quality to it
Mhm.
that does have its fans. Not everyone agrees with the direction we took with the artwork. So, and it's a simpler game. There are fewer different uh, factions in the game. Um, so I would take a look at Heroes of Might and Magic 2 because that has a slightly different feel to it, and more of a simplicity, but still really, really good gameplay. So that's
Mhm.
if I were looking at another Heroes of Might and Magic game, I'd go back and look at Heroes of Might and Magic 2.
Okay. It would be Heroes of Might and Magic 2, but with the art of Might and Magic 3.
Well, it has its own art style, and you might enjoy that. Here's another thing. You might want to if you can find it. I don't know how available it is. But what we call Heroes of Might and Magic 0,
Uh,
King's Bounty, which was Jonathan Canaham's original game that eventually led to the Heroes of Might and Magic series.
uh,
That is for historical purposes. That might be worth taking a look at.
okay, yeah, I'll definitely look into that. So we have a question from Max. If I'm remembering right, you joined the dev team for I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream
Yeah,
after the initial draft of a design doc had been made.
yeah.
What was the process of fleshing that out like? Where were there any particular nerve-wracking decisions you got to make, bringing the game in a different direction than that initial foundation?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, so Heroes of Might, I Have No Mouth and Must Scream was originally started with a different team.
Mhm.
Now, my story behind that, I Have No Mouth and Must Scream is my favorite short story of all time.
Mhm.
And I've long been a fan of its author, Harlan Ellison. I love the script he wrote for the original Star Trek series, City on the Edge of Forever,
Oh wow.
and I listened to him talk at science fiction conventions, and he was a real character. Uh, and I really enjoyed listening to him, and so I attended the annual Computer Game Developers Conference one year. I think this was like 1994. And I attended a session on the making of a video game adaptation of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Mhm.
And in walks uh, Harlan Ellison and his game designer, David Sears. And I was just jealous of David Sears because I thought I should be the one designing this game. It has a lot of has some similarities to my Prisoner game, and
Mhm.
I really wish I was you know, and he's working with my hero Harlan Ellison, and I was just green with envy. So about 6 months later,
Mhm.
I'm back in my office at a CD, not CDC, CDI was an early interactive platform. I was working on a CDI developer called Interactive Support Group, and we were making games for the CDI system. And the company was close to falling apart because the two owners no longer got along with each other, and we're about to split up. So you get a phone call from Pat Ketchum of Cyber Dreams,
Mhm.
which was the company that was producing I Have No Mouth, Enema Scream. And he said he was looking for a producer and wanted to know if I was interested in applying for the position. And yes, I was. And I went down to interview, and I found out that the position was to be producer for I Have No Mouth, Enema Scream. So I looked at the chance and I took it on. And turns out David Sears had left the project without
Mhm.
completing the design. I'm not sure why he left, but I looked at it, and a lot of good ideas in it,
Mhm.
but there were a lot of puzzles that weren't completed and a lot of dialogue that needed to be written.
Mhm.
Um, and and so and yeah, it needed and it was David Sears' uh, very first game design project. He's a very accomplished game designer now, but even he will say uh, when he took that on, he really didn't know what he was doing. It was his first project ever, and he was like a game reviewer, you know,
Uh,
before that. So yeah, the design needed to be completed, and I was the person to do it. I wasn't going to hire anyone else to do it, so
oh,
I went
absolutely.
and completed it myself. And so anyway, I started working on it, and I'd actually been working on it. Oh, and the original plan uh, was to use the in-house development team to make the game.
Mhm.
But not long after I was there, the decision was made to tighten up the company and get rid of its own development team and use outside developers.
Mhm.
So I contracted a company called Dreamers Guild to do the programming and the artwork for the game, but I had to
Mhm.
provide them with the design. So I was working on it. So I've been there for a couple of months before I actually met Harlan Ellison. And I take that back. No, not long after I was there, the Cyber Dreams threw a party to celebrate its wave of projects that I was working on, and
Mhm.
invited the press there. So I I was a new employee, and I attended the party, and at the party was Gary Gygax,
No way.
because yeah, the co-inventor of Dungeons and Dragons, because we were developing a game with him, and Sid Mead, who was the automobile designer, who designed all the uh, the flying cars for the movie Blade Runner, and so
Uh,
we were making a game with him with our own flying cars, and Harlan Ellison was there, and I don't know, it was a loud party, and Harlan was just enjoying running, walking around, and just being very Harlan Ellison-esque. And
mhm.
I talked to him briefly, but he kind of blew me off very quickly, and I
Oh,
didn't really get a chance at the party to explain to him that I'm now heading up his project.
uh,
So I didn't actually meet him until I guess the following month, and I went to his house. He lived not too far away from our offices, to show him the status of the game. And I was and so go to his house up in the hills above the San Fernando Valley,
mhm.
and house looked like a normal middle class house, except for the stone gargoyles. lining the roof,
Oh, that's so cool.
all on the roof. But they were protected by barbed wire, coils of barbed wire, to prevent the neighborhood kids from stealing them. Otherwise, it looked like no one else. And I went to knock at the door. I was there with my computer, big old computer. I was looking around, and he opened up the door, and he said, "I'll get in here. Another Cyber Dreams person. They're always sending me new people." And he was not in a good mood. Now, I'm meeting my hero for the first time. He's not in a good mood. Not like him at the party where he's just really enjoying himself. But yeah. And he was kind of growling at me and cursing, and he just set it up over there over my kitchen booth. And I'm over there, and I'm looking for a power outlet, and he's going, "It's right there." And I'm looking, I don't see an outlet. And he mutters, "Oh, another one of the Cyber Dreams brain trust." Looking, and I realize the outlet, it's not placed vertically, like on the side of a wall or on the side of the booth. It's placed horizontally behind one of the seats, and a plant and a pot was sitting on top of it that made it hidden. So it was like a search for the hidden object game, finding it out. So anyway, I find it, plug it in, and I start showing him our work on the game, and I talking to him about what we're planning on doing, and I talked about my past work and my work on The Prisoner, which he was familiar with the original Intelligence series. And something I knew about Harlan, he had a reputation for being very difficult to work with. And that was because I thought it was a defense mechanism on his part. He was always worried that he was going to get cheated, short shrift. People would take advantage of him. He wouldn't get full credit. And I tried to assure him that we would represent him well in this product. We would represent his story well. And this was the right team, and I was the right person to adapt his story. And he would look good as a result on it. The more I talked, the more I started to earn his confidence. So that the biggest hurdle on the project was getting him on my side. So especially since I took over the writing of the game. Now, I'm not a professional writer. I'm certainly not a Harlan Ellison, but the writing had to be done, and I didn't trust anyone else to do it. And I remember, and occasionally I'd go over to his home and show him the latest stuff that had been written. He actually only wrote a small part of the game, a small fraction of it. But I remember the first time I brought him stuff I had written, he's going through it, reading through it, and he goes, "Who wrote this shit?" I said, "I did." Suddenly got very embarrassed. And I said, "Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, I feel terrible." I said, "Harlan, no, you're right. Compared to your writing, it is shit. So go make it better." So with that, he went into his office and started rewriting it while I sat out in the kitchen and kind of looked around at the little Spider-Man toy he had dangling from his kitchen cabinet and looking at all the other things around. Well, about half hour he came out with much better written stuff, and that's what I go put into the game. And so it was so I got him to spice up some parts of it, but maybe 20 to 30% was touched by his hand. Another 20% was written by David Sears, and maybe 40 to 50% was written by me. Toughest part of it, I had to write a part in it where, in the game, one of David Sears' great ideas behind this game was the original story. It's actually not very long. It's like 12, 15 pages long. And it's all about the last 5 survivors of a nuclear holocaust. Started off by a mad supercomputer that sent off all the world's nuclear weapons. It killed all of humanity except for these 5 people who it tortured endlessly for its own amusement. And David Sears asked the question, why these 5 people? Which wasn't answered by the story. And so that's what the game became about. It was telling the backstory behind these people. One of them was a woman. I forgot her name. But in the story, each one confronts their fatal flaw, or some some bad thing in her past. Ellen was her name. She had to confront her rapist in the game. And so I wrote all the dialogue between her and her rapist. And that was really tough to do.
Yeah.
And what I was able to get into that headset and that mindset at the time, my firstborn son, as a baby, was diagnosed with neuroblastoma, which is a form of cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And so he had to go through a year of surgeries and chemotherapy and radiation therapy.
Jeez.
So I kind of took my feelings about that, the invasiveness of that disease upon this innocent person, kind of use that to think about, well, how would Ellen react to meeting her rapist? And I very purposely I wrote that dialogue. I wrote it at home at around like midnight, with all the lights turned off, and that's how I went in and wrote that dialogue. It was really tough to write. But yeah, that was the hardest part of doing it all together, was just writing that sequence. So that's a long answer to that question.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. Really getting in deep on that one, pulling back the curtain on that, and that actually answered one of my own questions. Was like, how was it, making a book into a video game in that format? So you totally answered that with that. And
yeah,
then
it's taking the essence of the book and figuring out how do I take what the video game platform is good at doing, which is interactivity, which results in even deeper stories. Not necessarily as well written, but yeah, lots of choices on the player's part, where the player becomes a co-writer of the story, giving the player an opportunity to make interesting choices, but still have interesting results.
So if you were to make I Have No Mouth Today, this is another question from Max. What themes would you really like to explore? And is there any new technology you would have appreciated when making this?
Certainly, I appreciate the graphics capabilities, especially 3D graphics capabilities of today. Really, really great tool for making games immersive.
Oh, absolutely.
Themes, look at today. People are so polarized into camps. There's no middle ground on anything, and people don't have normal discourse. They're yelling at each other and calling each other names, and there's just so much misinformation out there, and so many conspiracy theories. That's it's a fascinating topic. I taught these days is focus a lot on education, and I worked at a summer school last year, teaching game design to kids, and one of the kids came up with a great game about fake news, and the player had to distinguish between what was fake and what was real, and had to do a little bit of research in the game. And he didn't appreciate it because what it did, it was a brilliant idea. When we did our game fair, where the other kids in the summer camp would show off their games, I put up his game, but when I wasn't looking, he'd go up and switch it and put up kind of a standard role-playing game that he created, because he thought his friends would be more impressed with it. So I had to keep coming back and switching to his really brilliant idea instead of the standard one. But yeah, that's a great topic. That's something that I myself would love to explore someday.
I'd love to play something like that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. So this is a question from Twitch user Captain Morgan 64. Is there any games that you feel that your team or you weren't able to fully realize?
All games somehow seem to fall short. Every game I worked on is always your vision is always greater than what you're able to achieve.
Mhm.
Um, I certainly my greatest disappointment was Dark Seed 2, which was a sequel to Dark Seed, which is a game based upon the work of H.R. Giger. And I was working on that game at the same time as I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream. But it
Mhm.
was original story, and there were great people working on it. It was actually designed by Raymond Benson,
Mhm.
who was who worked on a number of interplays, interactive fiction stories, and eventually became a official James Bond author.
Oh, no
So
way.
he wrote the story behind it, and because Eager's work is so Cthulhu-esque or Lovecraftian, I
Mhm.
brought in a someone who wrote a lot of the modules for the Call of Cthulhu role playing game to come in and write additional dialogue and punch some
Oh, no
things
way.
up. And I had a great development team in in Vancouver working on it. But I also brought in the art director I worked with at the Walt Disney Company to come in and
Mhm.
do the normal world artwork. We had a normal world and a dark world, and he did the normal world side, which was bright and cheerful, but also somewhat sinister. Um, and really good music and and lots of recorded audio. And I thought for sure it would be a big hit. And I thought it was a really deep, compelling story. But no, it was not well reviewed and didn't sell well. In fact,
Uh-huh.
even one of the a game reviewer called up our marketing director and said I should be fired for producing such a
Oh my
game.
gosh.
So yeah, that was one that fell short of my of my desires. I think I thought long and hard about why it wasn't successful because I thought in every single way it was superior to the original game. Much broader
Mhm.
scope, much better dialogue engine, more interesting story. And I think it was because I made a mistake in the actor I chose for the lead character. It was a story about beca- succumbing to madness,
Mhm.
and I think I chose someone who kind of had a whiny voice, uh, who uh, who I guess wasn't all that pleasant to listen to, and I think that turned off a lot of people. In fact, later my sober director told me that she was very surprised I chose that actor. So I guess I made a poor decision there, and I think that affected the overall game experience.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some.
And send me a listen. So this may be our last question, and good thing it's a good one. If you currently had the rights to make a video game adaptation of anything in the sci-fi genre, what would you choose?
I've always wanted to revisit The Prisoner, so I this time I do it officially. When I made the original The Prisoner, it was done unofficially. I
Really?
didn't have the rights to it. We didn't have the rights to it. And in fact, what happened was the company I was working for, the marketing director, called up ITC, which is the British television company that owned the rights to The Prisoner, and said, "Would it be okay with you if we did a prisoner-themed restaurant?" And they said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And so the company took it to mean, okay, then that's okay to make a video game. So yeah, we did it. But yeah, I'd love to make revisit it and do it officially.
Mhm.
In terms of adapting other properties, I think I'd like to adapt my favorite novel, which is Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land. I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
how I do it. I don't know how I do it, but that'd be something I'd be interested in trying. Probably a good one to fit some of the things I've done before would be the Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. I think that would be a good thing to
Mhm.
tackle. Yeah, those are my answers.
So if you were to remake The Prisoner, would you keep it text graphics?
No,
No.
I wouldn't. Although I'd figure out something else to make it unusual, to make it surreal.
Hmm.
I'm gonna do text graphics, but yeah, I'd do something because I want the player to feel really immersed,
Uh,
but in a surreal way. So I'd do some kind of trick with the 3D graphics. I'm not sure what, but I'd figure something out.
okay, all right. So we have 5 minutes left.
All right, so that wasn't the last question.
And let me ask you this question. This is one of my
Okay.
questions. What is your favorite thing about what you do?
Oh gosh, I just so
Probably a lot, right?
love what I. When I was growing up, I was a huge fan. I was loved Lord of the Rings.
Hmm.
I grew up on Star Trek. Uh, I was a fan of it from the. I'm old enough that I saw the premiere episode of the original series.
Hmm.
I was into James Bond. I was uh, into magic and just all this weird creative stuff. And somehow I wound up in a career where I could just indulge in all the geek pleasures of my childhood. Um, and so I don't know. It's like it is like I'm constantly tapping into my childhood every day, everything I do, and it's a
Hmm.
really good balance this career between my left brain and my right brain. So the creative
Oh
side
yeah.
and the more logical technical side. I really enjoy that. And even though I'm an introvert, spend a lot of time on the computer. I
Hmm.
like other people, so I'm glad it's a way that forces me into a team environment
Hmm.
and all the wonderful, talented people I've met and worked with over the years. It's been a total joy. Uh, I couldn't imagine a better career for myself.
That was a beautiful answer. Um, Thank you for that. I'm happy you love what you do, and what's the old saying? The if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
I wish that were really true. Some days, yeah, it is hard work. It is hard work. It's the fact that I love what I do that allows me to survive the hardship and the difficulties.
Hmm. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, my
Uh,
pleasure. No, these were all good questions, and you asked them well, and you were a good listener, and so yeah, I appreciate it. This was a very joyous hour for me.
this is a lot of fun. Yeah, I got a lot out of it. So thank you so much for coming. We will um, promote your Twitter. I think we'll put it on the Twitch stream, and we'll put it on our social medias and stuff. So
Also
uh,
on Instagram,
okay.
you do that too.
Is it the same? Is it the same username?
It's probably David.Mullich. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all my social media. Use my name. I use my full name, so you'll find it that way.
Okay. Oh yeah, somebody already put in the chat. Okay, yeah. So we're all set on that. Um, so for the next few events in our summer series, we have another AMA with Dave Gilbert on August 3rd, a 5v5 League of Legends tournament on August 7th, and a 1v1 Super Smash Bros. Tournament on August 10th. So make sure to tune in and register for those. And again, David, thank you so much for coming out tonight, sharing your insight,
Oh, my
and
pleasure.
really making it a good night.
All right, stay safe, everybody. Game on.
Game on.